In June of 2020, one of the most recognizable brands in America quietly admitted defeat. A company that had hosted millions of birthday parties, generated billions of dollars in revenue, and built an empire around children's happiness was filing for bankruptcy. For decades, Chuck E. Cheese had been untouchable. To millions of kids, it wasn't just a restaurant. It was Disneyland compressed into a strip mall. A place where pizza, arcade games, flashing lights, and giant animatronic animals came together to create pure excitement. Parents might have hated it, but the kids? They absolutely loved it. But behind the bright lights and birthday songs, a disaster had been unfolding for years. A disaster that most people never saw coming. Because Chuck E. Cheese didn't die overnight. It died slowly, one bad decision at a time. And by the time management realized what was happening, it was already too late. This is the rise and near collapse of Chuck E. Cheese. The story begins with a man who had already changed the world once. His name was Nolan Bushnell. And Nolan Bushnell didn't just create one huge company. In the 1970s, Bushnell founded Atari. Atari wasn't just successful, it helped create the modern video game industry. And while running Atari, Bushnell noticed something fascinating. Arcades printed money. Kids would line up for hours and pour endless quarters into machines. The margins were incredible. But there was one problem. Parents didn't want to spend their weekends sitting inside noisy arcades. So Bushnell had a radical idea. What if you combined an arcade with a restaurant? What if parents came for the food while children came for the games? It sounds obvious today. Back then, it was revolutionary. And in 1977, Chuck E. Cheese was born. And it exploded. Families loved it. Children became obsessed with it. Birthday parties became a cash machine. And soon, locations were opening across America. Chuck E. Cheese wasn't selling pizza. It was selling excitement. And excitement is one of the most profitable products in the world. By the 1980s, the company looked unstoppable. But hidden beneath the success was a dangerous truth. The entire business depended on one thing. A thing that would eventually disappear. To understand why Chuck E. Cheese became so powerful, you have to understand what life was like before the internet, before smartphones, before online gaming, before PlayStation. If you wanted cutting-edge entertainment, you left your house. Arcades were magical. They offered experiences you simply couldn't get anywhere else. And Chuck E. Cheese had turned that magic into a business empire. Every flashing machine generated revenue. Every token generated profit. Every birthday party created another loyal customer. The pizza was important, but it wasn't the real business. The arcade was. And that's where the danger began. Because every great business has an assumption, a belief that the future will look similar to the present. For Chuck E. Cheese, that assumption was simple. Kids would always need arcades. They were wrong. The threat didn't arrive all at once. It arrived quietly. A Nintendo console here, a PlayStation there, an Xbox after that. Each generation brought better graphics, better gameplay, better experiences. And every year, the reason to visit an arcade became weaker. Why spend money on a machine for 5 minutes when you could own a better gaming experience at home? At first, nobody panicked. Chuck E. Cheese was still busy. Revenue still existed. Kids still showed up. But something had changed. The company wasn't gaining relevance anymore. It was living off nostalgia. And nostalgia can be dangerous because it feels like strength, when in reality, it's actually a decline. By the 2000s, many locations looked frozen in time. The same carpets, the same layouts, the same animatronic characters, and the same formula. What once felt futuristic now felt outdated. And while the world raced forward, Chuck E. Cheese seemed trapped in the past. But technology wasn't the biggest threat. The biggest threat came from Wall Street. By the 2010s, private equity firms were hunting for acquisitions, essentially looking to purchase other companies. And Chuck E. Cheese looked attractive. Strong brand, recognizable name, stable customer base. In theory, it was a perfect target. But there was a catch. The acquisition loaded the company with enormous debt. And suddenly, Chuck E. Cheese wasn't just competing for customers. It was competing against its own financial obligations. You see, debt changes everything. Instead of investing aggressively, every dollar must be justified. Every renovation becomes expensive. Every improvement gets delayed. And that's exactly what happened. While competitors modernized their entertainment experiences, Chuck E. Cheese struggled to keep pace. The company needed reinvention. Instead, it got financial pressure. And then something happened that nobody could have predicted. The world changed forever. March 2020, the world shut down. Coronavirus, originally starting in China, had taken the world by storm. Restaurants closed, birthday parties disappeared, families stayed home. For many companies, it was painful. But for Chuck E. Cheese, it was catastrophic. Think about its business model. Crowded rooms, children running around, shared arcade machines, large gatherings. The entire experience depended on physical interaction. And suddenly, physical interaction became impossible. Revenue vanished overnight. But the bills didn't. Rent remained, debt remained, operating costs remained. The company was hemorrhaging cash month after month. But there was no miracle coming. No hidden solution, no rescue plan. By June 2020, Chuck E. Cheese filed for bankruptcy after more than 4 decades. The king of children's entertainment had fallen. Or so it seemed, because this wasn't actually the end of their story. It was the beginning of something else. Bankruptcy gave the company something it hadn't had in years, a second chance. Management realized that they couldn't survive by protecting the past. The world had changed, and the business had to change with it. Animatronic bands began disappearing, stores were redesigned, experiences became more digital, locations became cleaner, brighter, and more modern. The company stopped asking, how do we preserve Chuck E. Cheese? And started asking, what do families actually want today? And that's the shift that may have saved the company. Because the future wasn't about arcade machines, it wasn't about tokens, and it wasn't even about pizza. It was about experiences. The one thing technology still struggles to replace. So why did Chuck E. Cheese fail? Not because people stopped loving it, not because children suddenly hated arcade games, and not because of one disastrous decision. It failed because the world evolved faster than they did. Technology changed, consumer behavior changed, competition changed, the economy changed. But for years, Chuck E. Cheese remained largely the same. Then came debt, and then came the pandemic, and together, they pushed the company to the brink. Today, Chuck E. Cheese still exists, but it's a different company. It's a company trying to reinvent itself in a world that looks nothing like the one that made it famous. And maybe that's the real lesson. Businesses rarely die because they're bad. They die because they keep winning with yesterday's strategy in tomorrow's world.